Good evening, folks. Welcome back to another Monday night live stream. Randomly, my camera's just decided not to focus. Let me get that. There we go. Typical. Everything else was going fine. Here we are. I've just noticed it. So yeah, I've just saw David Mackey saying a bit out of focus. I've got no idea why he decided to do that. But anyway, we're here. We're here now. Nice one. So we've got a good few people in the chat tonight. I wonder if the topic has got a few people kind of. I'm sure there's a few people who will probably know the kind of games that I'm gonna sort of plump for, but I think other people have other opinions, and that's kind of tonight. I'm obviously going to tell you what I think Games Workshop's best rule set is. I'm going to tell you why I think that. I'm going to tell you why some other games that you may think didn't make it for me. But the stream itself, after I've kind of like done my little bit that I'll probably clip for tomorrow's clips episode, it's going to be about like what do you think? Why do you agree with me? Why do you disagree with me? Which games do you think are a better rule set and why? So I think there's a lot there to be kind of to be chatting about. So let's have a look and I'll scroll back very quickly and see who we've got in the chat. We had Ashley C-roll in nice and early, about 6 o'clock. There was some chats before that, but it hasn't shown up on mine. They drop off as I mentioned before. We had Dirk in nice and early as well, saying whatever Andy will say, he's wrong. Yeah, well, you can't please everyone. We had Stonehorse Gaming in, Lord Maiden, Mark Wright, Ortega. Hello to all of you folks. Marcus was in as well. Carla Lamboga Alia, I think it is. Hello, Carla, by the way. We got Scott Longworth in as well. Horrid Dave. Carla saying if it ends up being Warcry, I might actually go and buy a box of the starter this week. I hope you can get your hands on one if that's the case. Lord Maiden says I think it could be Blitz Bowl. Kelly Caudle's in as well. Hello, Kelly. Saying after spending time with that, I think a serious contender for best GW rule set is the Middle-earth strategy battle game. We've got Tony Howell. Hello to you, mate. Palmsy, how are you doing, mate? I heard you're not being too well there, mate. Hope you're feeling a lot better now too, mate. Christian, hello to you, sir. Just scrolling down the chat now. We've got Busey in. Good evening, Busey. How are you? Steve Evans is in as well. Hello, Steve. John's addressing envelopes tonight while he's watching. Yeah, gallstones do suck, mate. You're not wrong there. Steve saying the best GW game ever made rules wise was War Master. I don't think I've ever heard of War Master, mate. Krabby's in. Good evening, Krabby. Thomas Moore, nice to see you, sir. Other Steve Evans is in as well. Hello to you too, mate. We've got Mark Berracloth. Good evening, mate. How are you doing? We've got Mark Coxey in as well. Hello, mate. We've got Kieran in there from Odd Sided Dice Podcast. Happy belated birthday to you, Kieran, as well. Hope you had a good day, mate. We've got Luke in as well from Standard Tabletop. Hello, fella. Got Jonathan Wyborn says can't stay for long but wanted to say hello. Hello to you, sir. Barry Kleiber, howdy back to you as well, mate. We've got Hendrik. He says, I did not know that GW made good rules. Well, here you go, mate. He's saying that I always have to carry around rule books, codexes, etc. It gives me a hernia. Well, then you're not playing the one that has the best rule set, then, are you? We've got David Mackay in. Hello, mate. Lord Maiden saying there's fireworks going off outside. What can I say? I like to make a bit of an entrance, mate. I arranged that just for you. Flying Mammal saying Middle-earth strategy battle game, Warcry and Blood Bowl. Ooh, we'll see what comes out in the wash then. Luke said he's getting some painting done for James's mini swap. Yeah, we've got a bit of a mini swap going on in the Patreon group. So yes, there's a bit of work going on for that one. We've got Glenn Griffin in. Hello, Glenn. How's you, mate? I'm back to the bit where it was a bit out of focus now. It looks like we got it back straight away. Henrik's doing a bit of painting for Mantic Pathfinder Secret Santa. I didn't know you were a Pathfinder, mate. Adam Murray's in as well, saying Gorga Morga. Hello, Adam. How are you? Where else we are? Vijay saying standard autofocus. Do you know what it is? It's been absolutely fine. It's only since I switched to the other screen to have like the intro, and then when I switched back, it was autofocus. Frantic's in as well. Hello, Frantic. Where the hell's that gone to? There we are. We're back now. Krabby saying 40k topic. We'll see about that, mate. Derek Hodge, hello, mate. He's painting some hoplites. Flying Mammoth says Warhammer Fantasy 6 edition. I can tell you now it is definitely no Warhammer Fantasy. Busey saying 9th edition. We've got Josh Lawson as well. Hello, Josh. How are you doing, fella? Luke saying, it sounds like Warcry is the best rule set, but I've not played it. I would give it to Warhammer Underworlds because it's so clean, but allows for such tactical diversity. Do you know what it is? Yeah, I won't even say anything there. Tim Cafferty, hello to you, mate. Saying Andy the Smudge Bird. Bloody typical, isn't it? This is what happens when you get a lens that has a really kind of low f-stop. The autofocus works pretty. Actually, what I should do is, anyway, it doesn't matter. You don't need to know. I know what I need to do, but I'm thinking out loud because this is what I do when I'm on live stream. Dissing, beware of a scam going around where people are pretending to be Cromlech. Well, we'll watch out for that one, mate. James Hart, good evening. Christiansen as well says, good afternoon from Quebec. Hello there over in Quebec. I hope you're all okay, Christian. Derek Hodge. Skullmunch is saying Middle Earth, Warcry, Blitzball. Yeah, I wouldn't have put Blood Bowl on like your other half, mate. That's for sure. Krabby says the best one is the one you like. Well, that's the whole point, isn't it? What I'm talking about tonight is my own personal opinion, and that's always the case. It's not like I'm suddenly telling you have to forget what you think is the best. This is what I think. But then the idea of a live stream is everybody gets to kind of discuss it. Thomas saying is one of the red rows I have to say Warcry or Alan Anna will shout at me. James is saying definitely Space Hulk for him. The best non-licensed Aliens game still holds up today. Good evening, Ryan. How are you, fella? David says, hi, BlackJack Arenos. He's heading to Canadian Thanksgiving today. We'll catch the rerun. I don't think I actually knew there was a Canadian Thanksgiving, mate. Lord Maiden says, why do you think it was you who had that organised so I wouldn't forget? Even the cat was interested. That's why I was a little bit late, mate, like a minute behind. I was just letting you see the fireworks first. Peter says, is Walking Dead GW? No, mate, it's Mantic, that one, mate. Kieran saying, second edition Warhammer. Stuart Hayes, good evening to you, mate. Jimmy G saying, can't believe you're even thinking GW made a good rule set. I can't believe you're even talking about Warhammer Fantasy Battle, mate. Scott's building 28mm Vikings. I saw them, mate. They're nice, those 3D printed ones. Shaggy's in as well. Nice to see you, Jack. Josh saying, yo, Chief. We've also got Yoakums in. This is late at the party. John saying, someone must pretend to be Redgrass Gaming as well. So what's going on? Is there somebody kind of emailing people, mate? Or is it like, what's the problem? Because I've not heard about anything about that. Okay. So somebody saying it's trying to be Redgrass Gaming and put up a post for their competition. Andy Smith's in as well. Nice to see you, mate. Marco's in as well. Hello, fella. And Pomsy saying, sometimes I pretend to be BlackJack Legacy. It doesn't do me any favours. You're probably holding yourself back, mate. So, right, I think what I'll do is then I might as well, how are we doing for time? 10 minutes. Perfect. Ed Handley just coming in as well there before I start. Nice to see you too, mate. So we've got a good bunch in tonight. I'll flick over to the other screen. Remember to press record this time as well. If I don't press record while I'm doing this, I have a nightmare the next day trying to get the video to upload it. So I'll crack on. So tonight I want to talk about the game that I think that has the best rule set from Games Workshop. It might not be your personal favourite. It might not be everybody's personal favourite, but it's kind of personal to me, and I'm going to go over all of the reasons why not. Now, Games Workshop have been around for quite some time now, and they have made numerous amount of games. I'm going to list some of them now. We've got things like Gorka Morga, we've got Rogue Trader, we've got Warhammer Fantasy Battles, we've got 40k, we've got Kill Team, Mordheim, Adeptus Titanicus, we've got Aeronautica Imperialis, we've got Blood Bowl, we've got Blitzball, we've got Dreadfleet, Space Hulk, Silver Tower, Betrayal at Calth, Middle Earth Strategy Battle Game. We've got Go Chosen, Necromunda, we've got Warcry, we've got Blitzball, we've got Shadow War Armageddon, we've got War of the Ring, we've got Warhammer Underworlds as well. That's just the name but a few. Warcaster, somebody just mentioned at the start of the stream. That's just the name but a few. So there's plenty of games to choose from there. And I'm sure everybody has their own personal favourites. But I'm sure for most of you, it comes as no surprise that my personal favourite, and the game I think above all of those, not even just kind of like marginally, the game above all of those that is the best rule set that Games Workshop has ever written is Warcry. And the reason I say this is that there's a number of different reasons, and I'm going to go over those ones. I would say that Warcry for me is what I would call my Rick Astley game. And let me build on that. The reason I call it my Rick Astley game is because the rules are just so simple. And in the words of Rick Astley, you know the rules and so do I. It's one of those things that every time I come back to play this game, I just remember the rules. And the people I'm playing against just remember the rules. It's not one of them where we've got to dig out the books and go, how do you set up again? How do you get started? How does this work? If you haven't played it for a little while, it really is. It's just a really simple rule set to get your head around. Every game I play of Warcry is me enjoying the game. It's me having fun playing the game against my opponent, not trying to remember the rules, not trying to look through the book. How do I do this? How do I do that? Can I do that? Can I do this? It just works. It's just straightforward. The other point, or another point, is stat lines are just really simple. You've got like sort of your toughness, you've got how many wounds you've got sort of what damage your weapons do. It's just really straightforward, how much your movement is, that kind of stuff. There's none of this sort of roll into wound and roll into hit, and roll into wound and roll into save, and sort of a number of different modifiers. It's just really, really simple. And because of this, there are no really kind of negative play experiences to the game. There's never that point where you kind of you roll to hit, and then you roll to wound, and then your opponent rolls to save and they miss it, and then all of a sudden there's some kind of strange rule that says, I get an extra save roll, and then after all that nothing happens. I find that happens a lot in Kill Team. I like Kill Team's rules, but there's too many dice rolls for what eventually sort of 9 times out of 10 ends up becoming a bit of a disappointment. There's something happens that means that you can't get to do the thing that you want to do. What I find in Warcry is you 9 times out of 10 you get to do what you want to do. It's just that you might not do as much damage as you'd like to. The fact that the damage profiles are designed that you inflict a lot of damage upon your opponent, and that because of that, the amount of wounds that sort of models get is beefed up. It creates those kind of cinematic moments. The way the rules work is so kind of intuitive that you can kind of run across, you can climb up something, you can jump off it, and you can come down and hit your opponent. And the last thing you want to do is when you get to that point is just go, oh yeah, and I saved it. Like yeah, you hit me, you tried to wound me, but I saved it. I was all right. It didn't get through my armor. That's kind of a negative play experience. It's a bit of an anticlimax for those cinematic moments. If every time you watch the movie and it got to that point where basically somebody's kind of like sort of sneaks around, comes up behind them, swings an axe, and then they go, oh no, you missed. That's kind of disappointing. Warcry doesn't have those moments. It only has those cinematic moments. It's just that it takes a few of them to take somebody down. And because of that high damage stat and the high wound stat is quite a satisfying mechanic. As I said before, the game feels like you're playing out a story, more so than probably most games I've played. And I think sometimes a lot of the time it comes down to how well you know the rules. If you know the rules really well, you can probably get into the storyline much better. So if you play 40k, for example, and you've played for years and you're not really thinking about the rules, maybe you can have those battles in your head. You can kind of see how that game plays out. I kind of get a similar feeling from Walking Dead as well. You actually do feel that kind of cinematic vibe from it. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact is that the rules don't get in the way of a fun and enjoyable play experience. Another thing as well that I really like about Warcry is there haven't been constant stat changes. So it's not like basically they've released the game, all of the cards come out for the different warbands, and then it's been a case of, oh, by the way, all of these stats have changed, and now that's not the same. And then there's another update that comes out a little bit further down the line. As far as I can remember, there haven't been, I think there's been maybe one when there was an error on a card, but there hasn't been like a constant kind of update to the rules. Now, part of this is because the game is very kind of fun and narrative in nature. It's not meant to be mega competitive, and therefore actually you don't really need to tweak the stats just to try and kind of balance everything out, because the game isn't perfectly balanced, but that's part of the appeal. And the fact that you can just pick up that deck of cards or that set of cards, or whether that be kind of get them in the Tome of Champions books, you can then just kind of, you can play with those models and not worry about trying to keep on top of stuff. There's also no real need to keep referring back to the rule book to look at like stats and tables to compare stuff. There's the very easy stat about sort of strength versus toughness, and other than that, there's nothing to reference in the book. Many GW games have a lot of kind of sort of strength v toughness tables in the past, or they have sort of like when you're looking at weapon profiles and looking all these different things up, especially when you're relatively new to a game, unless you really are on top of it, on top of the game, and you've been playing it for a while and there haven't been any stat changes, you will have to keep referring back to what's my weapon profile, what's the toughness of your model, how many wounds has it got, all those kind of things. I just find that Warcry has everything on the cards, and it just makes the game super slick. There's also no real major list building. If you're like me and you're someone that doesn't necessarily find list building the most interesting and fun part of the game, then this is perfect. You can pretty much buy a warband box and just field those 10 models, whatever it is inside the box. Just field them as they are. You can start to list build, especially if you're getting into some of the AOS factions, or you want to start buying multiple boxes to try and sort of tweak things out. You can like sort of list build a bit more and go a bit deeper, but there's no real need to do it if you just want to play for fun. The other beauty as well for me personally is that there's then not multiple different weapons to worry about. So it's not like, well, I'm going to have this model and I'm going to take this upgrade and I'm going to take this weapon and I'm going to take this magic ability. There's none of that to worry about for this game. If you enjoy that kind of stuff, there are plenty of other games out there that you can do that. It's just that this game has very purposefully streamed all that back, and again, it just adds another layer to everything's on the cards in front of you, and you're just playing the game. Another big sort of proponent for this one as well is it plays on a small play area. It was one of the things I really loved about Kill Team. I loved the fact that when Kill Team came out, they really sort of sized down the board area, and we had some great games playing Kill Team because of that smaller area. We had a table at my house where basically kind of we were playing sort of me and a friend were playing against each other. One side of the table, another couple of friends were playing on the same table, and actually having everybody playing quite close together actually built up the kind of the fun and the enjoyment of the game. Kill Team has its issues, and I might go into that in another video, but Warcry gives that exact same feel as well. The smaller play area and the really kind of succinct rules give it like a shorter player time. That means if you have got a bit of an unbalanced game, you're not playing it for very long. If you feel that it's sort of that it's out of balance, try and kind of have your small wins within that game. But just you can stop the game if you want and reset it up and have another scenario, do something different. It's not like you have to play out a 2 or 3 hour game to get to the end to find, well, actually, for the last hour of that, I knew I couldn't win, but I felt bad not playing it out kind of thing. And another thing I want to say is that the optional content for Warcry is optional. You don't have to buy the Tome of Champions if you don't want to. If you don't need the card stats or anything like that that's in there, you don't want the extra kind of narrative missions, you don't have to buy Tome of Champions. If you don't want to buy them Monsters and Mercenaries book, you don't have to buy it. That original Warcry rulebook is still as relevant now as it was when it came out over a year ago. And everything is in there from a rules perspective that you need. Now, of course, now it's not that easy to pick up the game as a box set. You can buy all of the bits separately. But we do have very soon, and I'd expect probably back end of this month, I think we'll start to see the Warcry Catacomb set, which is the new starter set that's coming out. And I'm really excited about that. Not only does it build upon an already really exciting rule set for me, it also adds something in that kind of underground dungeons. And I know some people have said they're not so keen on the kind of what looks like Kill Team Arena, kind of quite flat sit out. I just think it's another option. It's something else. It's another way to play Warcry using those original rules and having a few tweaks to give you extra kind of sort of fighting in the dungeons, if you like. And again, it's optional. If you're enjoying what you already have, or you just want to dip your toe in and kind of just play with those standard rules, that's all you need. This is an optional extra, and you don't have to have it if you don't want to. Now, from a rules perspective, as I've mentioned, I'm a really big fan of Warcry, and I honestly think it is their best rule set that they've ever done. However, that doesn't make Warcry the perfect game. There are a few things. One of the things is there is quite some imbalance in the game, and I think that some of the like the AOS factions, if you like, things like when Stormcast came in, they were the only faction that had ranged weapons at the time when they first came in, and that was quite sort of imbalancing. You can do a lot of things to overcome that kind of stuff. Placement of terrain, where the terrain is laid out, the mission that you're doing, can all kind of negate some of that stuff. But it's not necessarily sort of mega balanced out of the box, if you like. If you're just playing for a bit of fun, that's not really that much of an issue. But if you're somebody that takes your game in a bit more seriously, maybe it is for you. And I would also add, I'm not a huge fan of the sales mechanism of selling the cards. I think that the cards themselves should have just always been available, or they should have been available to to download, to print and play, or something like that. Because I think making them and then not selling them anymore, I think is a bit of a disaster, if I'm honest. I know they come out in the kind of Tome of Champions later on, but there's a lot of cards, I think, that I'm not sure actually if there's any more that's out of print now, or sort of are not available now. As it's been a while since I bought any cards for the warbands that I wanted, but I think that kind of model of not having the cards either always available or doing short runs of them, I wasn't a big fan of. So that's really why I think Warcry is. I mean, there are other games that I know get talked about a lot. There are games like Middle-earth Strategy Battle, which people will say is the best game that Games Workshop, they get best rule set. There's a lot of things I don't like about Middle-earth Strategy Battle. It's just not the kind of game for me. I don't like the way you come into combat and then you roll to see who wins the combat, and then you roll to see how to damage. I'm not really overly keen on that one. I'm not keen on the rules where basically you have to roll to kind of... I can't even remember what it's called now, but if you're shooting like over a fence or something, you roll to see if you hit, and then you roll to see if it gets over the fence or something. I forget what it's called. I think it's called an in the way roll or something. There's a lot of dice rolls in Middle-earth Strategy Battle that I just don't particularly like. And again, there's all sorts of weird stats with kind of magic, and sort of special named characters have extra stats that other characters don't have. I just find it quite sort of overly complex. I think it's probably better than 40k from a rule set perspective, but it's not instantly accessible in the way that Warcry is. Warcry, if that starter set was still available now, is hands down the best introduction game to miniatures, I think, for anybody. I think it just gives you the taster of the quality of the GW models, and it also gives you a really simple rule set to get your head around, to first dip your toe in and try the game. So that's why I think Warcry is the best rule set Games Workshop has ever made. Why not drop your comments down below and let me know which one you think is, or tell me why you agree with me or why you disagree with me. I'd love to know what you think. So folks, that one is why, and I'm sure to most of you there's no surprise in that one, but I was just thinking about games today, and every week I have to think about a different topic for my live streams, and I was thinking about today, like, is there a rule set that Games Workshop have brought out that I think is anywhere close to Warcry from just being the best rule set they've written? And I honestly don't think it's close. And I know people won't agree with me. I know people will have their own opinions, which is why these kind of things are always good. Always good chats. I've just noticed a comment there. Somebody saying, "Let's see what happens when Warcry has a third edition." It hasn't even had a second edition yet, mate. Nothing's changing for the Catacombs one. Right, let me see where we're up to here. I'll see if I can. Has that whole thing been blurred out, folks? My God, I can't believe it if that's the case. I've just basically done that whole thing and it's been blurred out. Oh, not out of focus. Oh my God. Oh well, there you go then. I might have to re-record that for tomorrow night. Right, where were we up to? Shaggy saying Shadespire has a very good rule set. I disagree. I think Shadespire is a good game. I think that the rule set is. I think it's good, but when Shadespire first came out, the rule set itself was fine, but there was some really sort of badly worded interactions on cards. And I'm not a huge... The game for me is a card game. It's not a miniatures game, it's a card game. And I think it got much better by the time Beastgrave come around. I've got no doubts the new one will be even better again. But again, some of it came down to the sales model. It was designed to kind of chase cards and buy cards, buy warbands that you didn't really want in order to get the cards. And that's why I don't think Shadespire was a great rule set. I think it's a good rule set. It was a good change, but I just don't think that Games Workshop don't necessarily always write their rules in the most succinct way, or they're kind of like their special rules, if you like, their special abilities. They don't always write them in the most succinct way, and I think that came out really strongly on the first edition of Underworlds with some of the cards and the interactions between them not really being as clear as it could have been. Glenn saying, I think Middle-earth Strategy Battle and Blood Bowl are rule sets that have stood the test of time with very little real change. I'd agree with Middle-earth and Blood Bowl saying that they haven't really changed. It doesn't make them good rule sets though. I find Blood Bowl hugely frustrating, and I've just mentioned there at the end about some of the things I don't really like about Middle-earth. But yeah, I wouldn't say that they were great rule sets. I think it's interesting that they've never really changed very much. But then I guess that's because those two games are not designed to drive huge amounts of spending. People just buy new models for those games. And when it comes to things like 40k and AOS, there's a constant kind of change. There's a constant need to keep sort of selling stuff, if you like. Tony saying on a personal level his favourite was Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, but that's not with them anymore. Ed saying both Underworlds and Warcry excellent, but best is so subjective. Yeah, exactly, mate. I agree, and that's the whole point. This is why it's just my opinion, to be fair. Krabby saying in a dimly lit room it could pass for Annie. In a dark room, everybody could pass for me. Jack saying Shadespire, what you talking about? Annie saying Space Hulk. Scott saying Space Crusade was GW. I think it was GW, mate. Yeah, it came after kind of Hero Quest, didn't it? And I can't remember if Space Crusade was Milton Bradley as well, or if it was Games Workshop. Gary McGregor, hello, mate. He says, controversial, I know, but 40k second edition for me was and is the best. I was never really kind of playing that kind of stuff. I'm just reading the bit there where the focus went out and it come back in. It's obviously just playing up tonight for whatever reason. Skullman says, shout out to War of the Ring was an excellent rule set. I've never played that, mate, to be fair. But it's something that I hear about. But I think one of the biggest, and it's one of the issues I have with Middle-earth Strategy Battle Game as well, is I'm just not a Lord of the Rings fan. I'm not ingrained in it to the point where I really want to play it because I love the films or because I love the story or anything like that. And I think that's a barrier for me. It's not a barrier for games where there is no sort of a big background behind it for me to want to fall in love with. I like the game for the game itself. Gary McGregor saying greetings from Michigan. Hello, mate. Luke saying most of their best rules come from the employees that leave. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, mate, to be fair. I mean, there isn't that many rules writers that have really left. I mean, if you think about the likes of Jervis Johnson, who is still there, the folks that wrote AOS are essentially still there. The folks that wrote Warcry are still there. The folks that, some of the older stuff, if you're talking like Andy Chambers and things like that, and Alessio and people, those games, some of those older rule sets now are quite clunky. I mean, Blood Bowl is a prime example of a rule set that's still quite clunky now, and Blitz Bowl is, in my opinion, is far superior as a rule set. But those same rules writers haven't exactly gone on and wrote like sort of well, in my opinion, nothing sort of groundbreaking. I guess you could maybe say a bolt action's probably about as big as it gets from that, but I think that's probably more down to the popularity of other games outside of GW stuff. I mean, people like James Hewitt has gone on and wrote some great stuff. He wrote Blitzball as a freelancer really for GW. So there are people that have gone on and wrote some good rule sets, but there are some fantastic rules writers still working in Games Workshop. Yoakum says, does Blackstone Fortress count? It probably does count, mate. Yeah, it's still a game. From a rules perspective, I think it's more of a board game as opposed to a miniatures game. But I mean, I'd put Silver Tower up there alongside Blackstone Fortress as a good board game. I think it's more self-contained and not as expandable, which I guess is what kind of keeps it a little bit tighter as well. Peter saying shock answer then, yeah. Luke saying Rick rolled rule set. Crowley says, did someone say Rick Astley? David saying Blackjack's being Rick rolled. Yeah, that's it. I always think of it. Somebody told me that a long time ago, and it's one of those games where you just sit down to play it, and it's not this like, right, we need to go back and remember all of these rules. It's like you know the rules, and so do I. That's why I call it my Rick Astley game. Where are we up to? Johnson, can't believe you didn't go for Never Gonna Give You Up. Skullmun saying Rick Astley once asked to borrow my Disney DVDs. I said he could borrow them, but I was never going to give him up. I've missed your jokes, mate. Ed Hanley says he played yesterday for the first time since lockdown. The only thing I had to check was the order of stuff in setup. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean, mate. It's just like it's just so rememberable. It's because it's intuitive. Shaggy saying, I definitely enjoy Warcry as you say to play, but would have liked the card symbols to be a bit more clear, as some for factions know who's the leader, for example, sometimes are hard to see. Yeah, I know what you mean, mate. I think it's one of those things that you do get used to over time, but some of the symbols are a bit similar. Tony's in as well. Hello, Mr. Spooky Thing. How you doing? Skullmun saying you need some stiffer drinks. I've got like this is like apple juice, mate. This. Ed's saying there are absolutely NPEs in Warcry. Negative play experiences. Try playing a core warband against Vanguard Chamber. I know what you mean, mate, but what I mean about no negative play experience, I mean from the actual rule set themselves. There are some. I did mention about imbalances later on, and again, it's something to do with some of the AOS factions. I do think are not as balanced against some other factions, but I've played some scenarios where it looked on paper that I was going to get absolutely kind of caned, and actually by playing to the scenario and not playing to try and take out a warband, it gives a very different experience. I played I think it was my Untamed Beasts against. What was it against? It was against Iron Jaws. And I knew I was never going to take the Iron Jaws out. But the scenario was about holding objectives. And I don't mind saying, I played it to perfection, because what I did was I basically got into position to be able to grab those objectives right at the end of the game. And sometimes it's not about killing your opponent. And that's where those kind of weird imbalances can sometimes just make you play it a different way. So I can appreciate if you get a mission where it's take out the opponent and it's something like that, it can be a negative play experience. But the game plays over such a short period of time, just re-rack and start again. Like, don't get hung up on it. It's not like this game is a mega competitive game. You're playing for fun. If it's not going to be fun, then don't play that particular kind of that faction, if you like. Tim Kelly's in, says, hey Andy and all, hope you're all doing grand. Thank you very much, mate. Peter says 40k can be disappointing in edition 6. My captain threw a warp grenade and missed. Simon Dave, good evening to you too, mate. Luke saying, are we supposed to sign off now that he told us which one it is? No, build it all. I'm not building up to it, mate. You need to know. I wanted to tell you why I thought that. So that's what I've done, mate. Ryan says, might have to see a night to watch something with the other. Try to keep her happy. When I say happy, I mean mildly content. I mean do not kill me. You have to, relationships are about give and take, mate. James is saying, should we call the stream War Cries Good in it? But he does agree with me, yeah. James is saying, my mate and I always forget it's called toughness, and we've ended up calling them dinner plates. Whatever makes it work, mate, that's fine. Simon Dave says he's been playing the 40k for a year and I still have to check the books for stats. Yeah, it's one of the things that I really like games where I've got the cards in front of me. I love Vanguard for that reason. I love Walking Dead for that reason. I love Blitzball for that reason because the cards and everything's right out there in front of you. I loved Armada for that reason as well when I was playing that. Things like God Tier. All of those games where all of the information that you need to know is right there in front of you. I just find it so much more intuitive. It's something for me, if I went back to play Kill Team now, I think I'd rather make some cards to have those stats in front of me. If and when I go back in to play 40k with the new 9th edition rules, I'm going to make some kind of cards for my units because that just speeds the game up for me. Having to go back into a book or have loads of little kind of post-it notes hanging out the side of codexes and things to try and check stuff, it's just a pain in the ass for me. And again, it's the same thing if you've got a rule book that I'm checking, I've got a codex that I'm checking, I might have a, I don't know, something like chapter approved that I'm checking, something else. Having multiple books to play a game it's just a bit another barrier really. It doesn't make me not want to play the game, but it just puts barriers in the way to keeping the game smooth. Warcry for me, the rules are simple, the cards are in front of me, I can just get on and play the game. Kodos is saying, let's see what happens with Warcry if there's a third edition. Yeah, that's what I mentioned before, mate. There hasn't been a second edition yet. The rules are not changing. There's no need to kind of do anything with the rules. The new edition, Catacombs, is just a new starter box. There's no changes to the rules. They're adding a few bits for kind of fighting in dungeons, but there's no change to the core rules. And it doesn't need a third edition because there's nothing wrong with first edition. So yeah. Christian sharing the link for the Patreon there. Thank you very much, Christian. I appreciate that. Glenn saying, I love Warcry, but it could be that because the game is relatively new, older games that might have been better rule sets get a little overlooked. I don't think so, mate. I think every game is new to you if you've just started playing it. I mean, Warcry's been around for over a year now, so it's not like it's not a new game. There are plenty of, like for example, Lord of the Rings Middle-earth strategy battle game was new to me when I tried to play it. And I didn't get on with the game. It doesn't make it a bad game. It's just not my kind of game. So therefore, it doesn't matter how old the game is if it's new to me. Blood Bowl is another example. It was new to me when I played it. I've just started playing Blitzball. I absolutely love it. It's the game I wish Blood Bowl was, so that because it's more accessible and it's more available to buy. But I don't think the age of a game necessarily makes it a worse or a better rule set. It's just about what you personally like to play, really. Lobin says, I played 2 games of Warcry. I only have my models and the cards, and I managed to get the game nearly straight away. Yeah, I found that the day that when I first read the rules, I've mentioned this a few times, it really clicked for me straight away, and I knew it was a game I was going to enjoy. I went and had a demo within like kind of turn 2. Both of us knew exactly what we were doing, and we just got on and played the game. It was really fun. Chorus is saying, from my experience, 3rd edition is a time where GW starts to mess things up. I honestly don't see a 3rd edition coming, mate. James says, I really feel like GW should push Warcry more. It's a perfect mini gaming introduction. I'm surprised they don't push it more, mate, if I'm honest. But I mean, I guess that for the vast majority of this year, coronavirus has really kind of put paid to a lot of things, and I would have thought that we might have seen more Warcry content had they been operating at full power. I think because they teased some of the. I think when was it they were teasing? It was before the whole lockdowns and stuff at the start of the year that they were teasing the what they call the shadow stalkers or whatever they're called, the ones that are coming in the new starter box, and the Scions of the Flame. Were in the original book anyway as well. So I think there's been a bit of a kind of... Ninth editions obviously took full attention this year. So who knows? I think we might start to see it get pushed a bit more. Peter saying Tome of Champions and Monsters and Mercenaries, you say. Yes. So Monsters and Mercenaries was an expansion that came out quite quickly after release, which basically allows you to add monsters to your games, so you can kind of go monster hunting, and allows you to add mercenaries to your warband, so you can add like a mercenary, which tends to be a bit of a weird character or something. And all of those mercenaries were all existing models that were in the AOS range that you can buy as solo minis. Quite a lot of them I already had from Silver Tower, which was great news, really. And again, it's another thing to play. It's if you want to play narrative games, if you want to kind of build a few kind of sort of homebrew kind of missions and things, it was perfect for that. Tome of Champions was kind of their annual at the end of last year, which basically put all of the stats for the available models in a book, and then added some more narrative missions as well. And it's optional. If you've already got the cards for the warbands you don't need to buy that book if you don't want to. If you're thinking about buying some of the warbands where the cards are no longer available, which I said I'm not a big fan of, then maybe you want to pick that up. But to be fair, there are so many of those cards are shared online. There's loads of videos that do kind of like sort of reviews. Red Rose Wargaming, I would say, please go and check it out. They do loads of reviews of the new warbands when they come out. You can get the information from those cards. You can write them down on a bit of paper if you want. If you can't get a hold of the cards, don't let that stop you trying to play the game, basically. Thomas Moore says, Hope Cities of Sigmar get specific warband like Spire Tyrants. Wasn't impressed with the White Dwarf lot. I think that's all they'll get, mate, to be honest. Caradron Overlords got exactly the same. Oh, no. Did Caradron Overlords get cards? It was Fire Slayers, wasn't it? Got exactly the same thing. They got the White Dwarf list as well. I think that's as much as they'll get now, mate. Let me scroll back up because it's just jumped off the top of my screen now. I'm just going to dive in here. I'll come to where... Oh, there it is. Ben Davey says, love the game, but I've reverted to playing Warcry specific bands only as they're much better balanced. I prefer that, mate, if I'm perfectly honest. And for me personally, just because it's cheaper as well. If I buy a Warband box, then I've got a warband box ready to go. If I want to go into some of the AOS stuff, I end up having to buy kind of a box of 10 of these to get 3 of them, and then a box of 5 of them to get 1 of those, and it just makes it more expensive. I personally like to stay with with the Warcry warbands. I like that aesthetic to the game as well, but I'm not kind of against playing other people and their stuff. James saying, your focus dropped after the monologue. Thank God for that, mate. Tony says, as tabletop games go, Warcry confuses the heck out of me, but it's the best of a band budge. It's super simple, mate. To be fair, it does not. It's not as difficult as you would think it is. Jim says, I'm tuning in now, but agree on Warcry. I checked the edited clip for your reasons tomorrow. Thank you very much, mate. Yeah, everyone tell me about the focus as well. It wasn't until you finished. Jonathan says Bloom was quite recent. Nice one. Mark was saying, totally agree. Warcry is awesome. Fast, simple, and most importantly, fun. That's exactly it, mate. If gaming isn't fun, then why do we bother? I don't think I'm generalising to say we all play games to have fun. Surely that is the prerequisite. We're supposed to have fun. And if you're not having fun, if it's too difficult... And I know people like difficulty. People like to be tested. That's different from sort of having barriers placed in the way to making it fun. I just find Warcry is the most simple way to get really nice minis on a table and have a really cinematic, fun experience. I've not found anything, especially from GW, I've not found anything that comes close to just that kind of super quick, accessible play experience. Kodos is saying best rules GW has done in my opinion was Battlefleet Gothic, as long as played in campaign. To be honest, mate, I think that kind of passed me by. It's not a game I was particularly interested in, but yeah, it kind of passed me by many years ago. Wesley, I thought my eyes had got worse. No, I did. The camera is kind of like super funky with its autofocus, and it actually focuses when it sees my eye, it focuses on my eyes. But then if I turn away, to do something else, I think sometimes it kind of gets a bit lost. I keep forgetting to put it back to like zone focus. Simon Day says, for me it's about lore. Personally less interested in fantasy, so never picked up Warcry. Maybe I should. To be honest, mate, the lore isn't. The lore for Warcry is actually really interesting, and I bought the Warcry novel, which came out on launch day as well, and it's actually a really, really good book. And fantasy was never really a huge thing for me. It was playing, like as I mentioned before, I'm not a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. It was actually playing Kings of War Vanguard that got me into fantasy gaming, really. You don't necessarily need to be into fantasy to enjoy what Warcry brings, basically. Yes, it doesn't have kind of laser guns and stuff of like sci-fi, but it's not stereotypical kind of. It's not just like. I guess it is kind of elves and dwarves and all that kind of stuff, but it's not. It doesn't feel like it's kind of steeped in that sort of magical, mystical spells and stuff like that. The magic side of things, is more just based in like it's a ranged weapon or something can fly kind of thing. I'm not a big fan of the whole magic kind of stuff. I tend to build warbands and stuff in other games that don't have magic because it's one less thing to have to remember, if you like. Scott saying, personally for me, I like Space Marine and Mordheim. Mordheim, again, it was a very narrative-focused game in terms of a bit like Necromunda for me, where it only works well if you're playing in kind of long campaigns. It's not the kind of game you can just pull out and play a kind of like a very quick one-off game. And rules-wise, again, it takes a bit more kind of remembering that stuff. Fiji saying, once Underworlds introduced faction decks and cleaned things up with keywords in Beastgrave, it got a lot better. I completely agree, mate. I completely agree. Fiji saying, yeah, the card chase model is pants. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that card chase stuff. Pomsy saying, new Warcry starter coming soon. Yeah, it should be. I'd imagine, mate, this month. And the reason I say this month is because there is a novel that is coming alongside it called Warcry Catacombs, and that's kind of release date is in October, and I'd assume it'll release the same weekend as the new Warcry starter set. Mark is saying, so the only GW rules that I know is 40k 4th to 8th, the newest Space Hulk, Warhammer Fantasy 7th and 8th, and the latest edition of Blood Bowl and Warcry. So of them then, Marcus, which one do you think is the best? Matthew saying, hello all, late chasing down minor core problems. Well, you're here now, mate, that's the main thing. It is what now says, how does the GW keep the content flow coming without changing the core rules and overcomplicating the game as they did with Beastgrave? Because what they do is, mate, they keep the gameplay coming because they keep adding in narrative missions and stories, and as new warbands are released for it, be that existing AOS ones or new Warcry ones, they bring in new abilities that come with those. Like the faction abilities that come on the cards are a way to kind of keep the game fresh and stuff. And the fact that you're only playing with like maybe 10 to 13 models in a warband means that you'll go and buy a new warband. It's not like I've had to commit to a 2,000 point army to play the game. You've committed to like painting 10 to 15 models. So then when they're done, you might go and buy another one. So you end up with multiple kind of warbands, which then brings in some different flavour and different play styles. The way they've been bringing in like optional extras like monsters and mercenaries and the narrative missions, what they called like the narrative sort of campaign stuff, I think is exactly what the game needs. It's what they should have done with Kill Team, really. Marcus is saying Kill Team. I forgot Kill Team. Yes. Steve saying, yeah, it was GW and MB. I had a feeling I remember seeing the MB logo on the box for Space Crusade. Matthew says, what are your thoughts on Star Wars Legion? I feel they are card chasey. I almost regret getting into it. I don't think Legion suffers from the same card chase that, say, X-Wing did originally in X-Wing version 1, but I think there is still an element of it. And unfortunately or fortunately, if you're FFG, it sells really well, so getting a hold of stock isn't the easiest. I think if you're wanting to play it mega competitively, I think you're going to unfortunately have to chase that stuff down. However, if you just want to play it for fun, like any game really, just play it for fun, just buy the models you like the look of. I think the problem is let's put like kind of like hyper competitive tournament players to one side. For everybody else, I think we sometimes get hung up in the fact that we need the most competitive list, and we need to have that latest thing, and we need to have the most powerful thing. I think we sometimes forget actually that 80% of this hobby is kind of just collecting, building and painting and enjoying that side of it, and probably 20% of it is actually getting those models to and maybe even 20% might be too big. 20% is getting those to the table and just having a bit of fun with like playing some opponents. And in the current climate, where getting games is probably even like less often than you used to, the majority of the hobby is just collecting and painting and stuff. So I personally don't think it's kind of card chasey, but I can imagine if you're trying to play at the top tier levels, I can imagine it probably is. Richard Smith saying he's still got his Space Crusade as well. Kodos is saying War of the Ring was better than Warhammer by the time, but I had a problem with named characters which were essential to the flair but not balanced. I've heard about some balance issues in the Lord of the Rings games. I'm not familiar with them to that level, so I don't know if that's the case. John says I can confirm Warhammer Fantasy 5th Edition was not the best. Still the only game I've played. It's... I just found the Warhammer Fantasy games were just rules heavy, I think, was probably a polite way of doing it. Wesley saying Warcry is great intro rule set, but Middle Earth for me is the best rule set GW ever made. There's a lot of people, I think if you're into a heavier rule set with a lot more kind of stats and stuff, I still don't think, like as an example, I couldn't play Middle Earth Strategy Battle without having kind of like sort of like sheets and stats and referring to rule books and looking up rules. I still couldn't play it like that, and I've read through that rule book many times trying to get my head around some of it. It's just not intuitive. I'm sure if you're a big fan of Lord of the Rings and you play it often enough, some of that stuff will start to click. But for me, it's a game you have to want to play, and you have to put the time into learning it. I think Infinity is exactly the same. I love the Infinity lore. I love the Infinity universe. But that is a game you have to put time into, to learning and playing and remembering what all the different models do and what all the different things are. I see Middle Earth very similar. I'm not saying it's like that for everybody. For me, that's how it is. Matthew saying Man of War was the original epic skill Space Marine, one of my favourite. Gavin Watson says, did the guy who wrote Frostgrave work at GW? I don't think he did, mate. Joseph McCulloch, I don't think he ever did work at GW. Simon Day says, I don't play much these days, but when I do, bolt action is great fun. Love the activation system. I like the activation system, to be fair, mate. It's something I'm surprised we don't see in more games, if I'm honest. Skullman agrees, he's a big Middle Earth fan as well. Dax is saying, I know a few will agree with me, but I love Necromunda. Yes, it's crunchy and there are a lot of rules, but it can create some of the most fun stories of any game I've played. I love the campaign system, depth of the setting, and just the crazy thing that can happen. I get all of that thing that you've just explained from playing Warcry without the crunchiness of the rules, without having to reference 3 or 4 different rule books, without having to kind of sort of play for 2 hours or however long and play through long campaigns. I can get that from Warcry in a 40-minute game or a 45-minute game, which is exactly why I love that game. Pomsy saying I don't get a chance to play much, so I'm just going to agree with Andy. That's as good a reason as any, mate. Sam, good evening, mate. How are you doing? He's got a day off and he's painting his friends white scars, Indian food for lunch. Nice, mate. Dax says, it doesn't pretend to be balanced. Yeah, and I think Warcry to an extent is the same as well. Tony saying Blackstone Fortress confused the heck out of me. The rules ended up with me putting the minis back in the box and leaving it be. I watched the playthrough for Blackstone Fortress and it kind of put me off. It didn't look that fun, but I've heard so many good things about it that if it was still widely available, I think I potentially might have picked it up by now. Jonathan says, do you have a rule set out of GW that stands out for you? Jonathan, do you mean that is not a GW rule set, or do you mean that within GW's other rule sets? Ed saying, Iron Jaws are one of the weakest factions in the game because they're slow as hell. I thought that, mate, until I played against them, against somebody who knew how to use them. They are not slow as hell if you know what you're doing with them. There are some abilities that they've got that can make them charge across the battlefield and absolutely wipe you out with one swing. If you're playing them and you're finding them too slow, you either haven't worked out, or your opponent who's playing them hasn't worked out how to use them yet. I got my arse handed to me by an Iron Jaws player at an event at Warhammer World because I didn't realise that's how they played. And when he showed me what they can do, I completely changed my opinion about Iron Jaws. He went on and won the event because of that. Christian sharing the link there for the t-shirts as well and the hoodies. Thank you, mate. I'd say absolutely agree on the cards. When I started playing mini games, it was with X-Wing. Not having cards is painful now. Yeah, I kind of got used to just having cards in front of me. I started like playing. I started playing Malifaux. All of the cards were in front of me. I started playing War Machine. All the information was in front of me. What else have I kind of played like that? Pretty much most things. I just like having the cards in front of me. I know games companies don't like doing them, because if they change anything, then they have to change the cards as well. It's one of the reasons games like X-Wing went to kind of like online stuff. It's why Infinity has the kind of their online free list builders and stuff. But for me personally, if I've got to keep flicking backwards and forwards through a kind of a rule book or like a codex type book, looking for stats, it's just a barrier to actually playing the game. And I know that you can use things like Easy Army or like Battle Scribe, but even their layout isn't necessarily the best. Let me scroll back a little bit. Marcus is saying I make army sheets when I play with my units, so the thing I need to check is rules once in a while. Yeah, definitely. Sam saying understandable. I find that high reference RPGs to be a pain. Complex is fine. Don't make me search through books and books and books. Yes, that's kind of my opinion of what I've seen from Warhammer Fantasy, to be fair. Tony says, personally, I found the weird dice thing in Warcry confused me. It's interesting that, mate, because I find the weird dice thing, as you put it, is very similar to something like Vanguard. It's very similar to something like Walking Dead. I just find that Walking Dead All Out War, not All Out War, sorry, Call to Arms, I should say, is that essentially what all you do is you roll those dice and you've got like doubles and trebles or quadruples to use to basically to set off abilities. And I found it really intuitive, but every game's different for people. That's it. Caller says, dude, now I just have to go and grab that star set for Warcry. Do it, Caller. Do it. David says, Warcry is my favourite miniatures game currently. Yeah, it's definitely in my top 5, mate. It's probably my top 3. I wouldn't say it was my number 1 at the moment, purely because I'm just not getting a chance to get out and play games. So obviously, kind of as I'm not playing it, there's other games I'm enjoying more at the minute, but it's still a game that as soon as I can go out and get more games, I'll get back to playing it as soon as I can. Kieran saying, sorry, I have to disagree about the writers of GW compared to those who are non-employees now. Go and look beyond X's who wrote for GW, but people who worked for GW and went to do games. For example, Michael Lovejoy. There are a lot of people that used to work for GW and have left and gone on and done other things. But I think what you can't forget as well is that a lot of them learned to be rules writers because they worked at GW. And I mean, if you speak to anybody that used to work there, they will tell you that they learned a lot from working there, being around that amount of creative people, working with really good rules writers who've helped them to craft their kind of, craft the way they write rules. They might have even taught them of what not to do by doing things very differently. But I think that's the same in any business. I think that's healthy. I think it's healthy that people kind of want to go and spread their wings. It doesn't mean there are bad rules writers at GW. I mean, I just think that there are some people that have left GW and then haven't really gone on to write anything like sort of groundbreaking, if you like. There are other people that have gone on and wrote kind of popular games. It's a mix of both, really. Peter says, the game I had the most fun playing was the original Necromunda, but I'm looking forward to playing Middle-earth strategy battle. Tony says, the dice in the big book put me off. It's not a big book, mate. It's probably one of the smallest books that Games Workshop do, to be fair. Andrew Fairbank says, don't worry, I'm here. Hello. Peter says, 100 plus watching. I can't actually see the numbers, mate. I don't know how many people are watching. But nice that you're all in. Thank you very much. If we do have 100 people, be nice if you click the like button. That would mean a lot to me. Thank you very much. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I think I'm just under 200 subscribers away from 9,000 now. It'd be nice to hit 9,000 subscribers. Nice little kind of sort of personal milestone. Scott says, I've never played Warcry. Didn't GW turn down Flames of War? I'm not sure about Flames of War, mate, but they didn't want to make a historical game. There were people that worked at Games Workshop who wanted to make essentially what turned out to be bolt action, and Games Workshop didn't want to do a historical game. So when they were made redundant, they went off and started up Warlord Games, and the rest is history, really. Joachim says, Warcry is my favourite game so far, and I agree it's best with Warcry-specific warbands. I also like that they updated the rules for how you earn glory points in campaign games. Yeah, they did tweak that bit, didn't they, mate? And adding mercenary and monsters in campaign is also fun. Horror Dave, hello fella, how are you? George is in as well. Says, it's been a while. Nice to see you, George. Anima says, Warcry is the best rule set for me because it's super easy and initiative. Completely agree, mate. David saying, early night for him, take it easy. See you later, mate. Horror Dave saying, Warcry might have a good rule set, but the lore and minis don't interest me. That's a personal taste, mate, isn't it? It's like any game. There's loads of games that people really like in the lore. I think Middle Earth is probably a great example. I'm not a fan of Lord of the Rings, and unless you are a huge fan, I think unless you're a fan, the minis don't really kind of do it for me either. I mean, something like Smaug is an amazing mini, but like I don't see a lot of the Middle Earth minis and think, wow, like I have to paint those kind of things. But that's, again, personal taste, and that's what makes this hobby great. We all love different things. VG saying, I still think it'd be better off reskinning Warcry for Kill Team. Yeah, it would be interesting if they did, but I think Kill Team is too much of its own thing these days. I don't think GW would do that. The Tasty Brain Drain, hello mate. He says, just let you know, my roommate and our cat came through the hurricane just fine. I'm glad, mate. So we lost power for a few hours, but that's pretty much it. As long as everyone's safe, mate, that's the main thing. Mark says, I think my favourite rule set would be 40k of 4th edition. The rules were so much simpler since it had rules for Kill Team, which was no HQ or heavy units with more than 3 wounds from 2. that sounds complicated even just reading it, mate. I guess it's probably... It's somewhere between where Kill Team is now and where Combat Patrol games are for 9th edition now. Thordlum saying, all these viewers and hardly half have liked. That's just how it is, mate. Don't worry about that. Dave says, isn't there a show on Warhammer TV now which is just for the Meta Chasers? They have just announced that, mate, actually. A new show called Meta Chasers, I think. Simon Dave says, I was interested in Legion, but I found the minis a bit boring. I love Star Wars, but I don't want to keep getting different types of stormtroopers. It was one of the things that put me off in the early days, mate. I am a big fan of Star Wars. But as a miniatures game, taking my love for Star Wars to one side, as a miniatures game, for quite a long time, there was lots of stormtroopers versus lots of rebels. And that was kind of it. The main characters that you wanted to see weren't really coming through fast enough. And it's only now that we're starting to see the Clone Wars stuff coming out as well. We're starting to see a little bit of variety in what you can actually field. But yeah, I kind of held off buying more stuff to wait to see it fleshed out a bit more. Tasty Brain Drainer says, all right, back to work. I've been here since the beginning. Just swamped at work. Take care, mate. Hope you're well. Is it Schneily? Hello. Nice to see you. Welcome to the chat. He says, Advanced Hero Quest, the best rules GW have done. I've got Hero Quest, and there's obviously a lot of talk about Hero Quest at the minute. I know Advanced Hero Quest is a bit different as well. The GW added stuff to that one, but and essentially, I think in fact, essentially, it didn't end up really becoming what Warhammer Quest was. There's Hero Quest was good for its time and a good intro game, but there's a lot of rose-tinted glasses around that game, I would say. Ed saying, trying to play anything at top levels requires chasing the meta, be that desirable cards, Codex, Crit, or whatever. Yeah, I agree, mate. If you want to play at a top level, you're just going to have to keep on top of the game. George is saying, Adeptus Titanicus was the game that got me buying anything GW again. Can't be doing with additional rulebook for it, though. Yeah. Dave says, why don't we do a rule set war game tier list? Because I think it's because it's pretty much, it's very much personal taste, mate. There's a lot of things that, like people have been saying in the chat tonight, good rule set, don't like the minis, or people love the minis, but the rule set's too complicated, or there's not enough sort of, or some people don't like a game because nobody plays it locally. I think there's just too much, there's too many moving parts, really, sort of too many, what's the word I'm looking for? Too many variables, basically, for to come up with a list like that, really. It's like trying to say what's the best song. Scott's saying the Lord of the Rings sculpts are horrendous, aren't they? Around 16-year-old sculpts. I wouldn't say they're horrendous, mate, but they were made intentionally smaller than normal GW minis, basically to save money. And they're just like, I mean, they're accurate likenesses of what they're meant to be, but they just don't kind of set the world alight for me. Lord Maiden says, if you like the activation stuff from Bolt Action, look at Mortal Gods and Judge Dredd. VJ saying, Necromunda, the only game where you have to roll to scratch your ass. Yeah, I think there is a lot of rolling in that game. Margot says, I play a lot of Warcry in the last year, and I disagree that the Chaos Warbands are underpowered. If you buy 2 boxes and make adjustments to the list, they are on par with the AOS ones. Yeah, I agree, actually, mate. I would agree with that. And I think a lot of people buy a box, and then because they have a warband, they don't feel the need to go out and buy another box to start a list build. You're exactly right about Untamed Beasts having 2 cats in there makes a massive difference. And I think what happens is people don't list build for efficiency, if you like, with the Chaos Warbands. They buy a warband and just use it. But then if it comes to buying Stormcast, or it comes to buying, I don't know, Fire Slayers or something like that, or Nighthaunt, they go and cherry pick the models that they want from a more powerful list. So yeah, I think that you probably bang on the money with that, mate. Phil saying, is this current rule set or any rule set? Any rule set, mate. This was my opinion on any rule set GW had done. Marcus says really likes Blackstone Fortress. Christian saying, join the BlackJack Legacy Facebook community there. We've just passed over 1,000 members in that community now. Be awesome to see anybody join that's not already a member. Busey saying, don't forget there's nothing wrong with making your own rules, twisting them up to simplify if need be. I agree, mate. I did exactly that when I was playing Kill Team. I missed half of the stuff out purely just to make it more streamlined. Phil saying, BSF Blackstone Fortress is great, but the rules are all over the place. I've not played it, mate, really, to comment on that. I've obviously watched playthroughs and stuff, and I understand how the basic game works. But yeah, I wouldn't know if they're all over the place or not. Scott saying, Iron Jaws are crazy if you know how to use them. My favourite faction. Yeah, I agree, mate. If you know how to use them, they are crazy. Phil saying, I play X-Wing 2.0 with the cards. With the cards. I think it's the points, isn't it? That's on the app now. I think there's no point costs on the cards anymore. I think that's what it was. Spiderlord, good evening, mate. Says, I thought Underworld's a pretty good rule set. I just couldn't keep up with the new seasons. The rule set itself was fine. There was nothing wrong with the basic rules. But then what happened was the interaction between the cards wasn't really clear. At that point in time, Games Workshop hadn't really wrote a card game, and one thing, if anybody plays things like Magic the Gathering, that kind of stuff, you will know how important it is to have really clear, succinct rules on cards and how they interact with other rules on cards. So if I play this and you play that, how do those 2 cards interact? And I think what happened was they weren't particularly good at that in Season 1. By Season 2, they'd got a little bit better, but then there was a bit of kind of imbalance about how things interacted. And it's one of the reasons by the time they got to Beastgrave in Season 3, they started to phase out some of the Season 1 cards to take out those cards that actually just either weren't worded quite correctly or caused some kind of conflicts. And I think that's why now we're starting to see with Beastgrave, we're starting to see the game really starting to come into its own now. And I think the new season, when we'll see some of the Night Vault stuff getting cycled out, I think it'll be even better again. George is saying X-Wing version 1. I've played demos of X-Wing version 2, but to be fair, I didn't want to start chasing stuff. Basically, I didn't want to buy all the upgrade stuff to version 2. I play it so infrequently that I'm happy just to play version 1 rules with what I had. Peter says, what would the 9K subs dance look like? It wouldn't look like anything, mate, because I'm not dancing till I get 10,000. Clint Dawson says, he's painting up a terrain as I listen to you. Started playing games with Malifaux. First rule set to capture me since then. Clint, welcome to the chat, mate. Clint, Malifaux was the first game that really captured me as well. And I keep looking at version 3 to go back and play it again. I just love the background lore to that. I would quite happily read books on Malifaux's sort of background and lore all day. Luke says, I really need to try Warcry. I've heard it's really good. Luke, if we weren't in lockdown, mate, and all this kind of stuff, and we get games, I would love to take you through a game of Warcry. Sam says, it's hard to judge good rules writers from bad ones when you consider a lot of games have traditions that have to be kept to plus personal taste. Some folks can't separate opinion and reading and playing. I think what happens, mate, is there are some rule sets that are written by one person, and badly laid out rule books can impact upon what people's opinion of a game is. It might have really good rules, but if it's laid out badly, that can cause problems. You would then have bigger companies like Games Workshop where there are multiple people working on the rule sets, and they are working within a very tight scope of what's expected of them. So they might be very, very good rules writers that are basically writing to somebody else's sort of wants and needs, if you like. So it's quite hard, really, sometimes to be able to balance those things out. There are some games that just work really well. Warcry is one of them for me. There are some games that there's a good game in there, but you have to really want to play it. You've got to get over the hurdles, the obstacles to get an understanding of those games. Peter says, evening all, just back from work, finishing his Star Saga Mercs. Where we at? Lord Maiden saying Smaug is like £300 plus. Yes, it is a beautiful model, mate. To be honest, £300 plus is not looking that expensive the way the prices of GW minis are going up at the minute. I think things like the Gargants and stuff being at 120 quid starting to make Smaug look like a bargain. Paulie P says, best rules GW made, Judge Dredd the role-playing game. You even get cardboard minis with it. Kept 14-year-old me very happy making them on my birthday. I didn't realise they made that, mate, to be fair. I think Games Workshop actually tried to get the license for Star Wars many, many years ago. And I think if you look online, there are some images kicking about of the Star Wars minis that Games Workshop actually made for the pitch. But for whatever reason, they didn't get it or they decided not to go for it or whatever. But yeah, it just shows how things have changed now. Sam saying there are some great rules I'll never play as they're not for me, not what I want. I completely agree, mate. Everything's personal taste. Marcus is saying the Smaug model's awesome, but it's expensive. Spiderlord saying Warcry is a great rule set. It's particularly welcoming to casual non-gamers while still being strategic. I completely agree, mate. And unfortunately, I think those kind of games are a bit few and far between. I think that people... And I understand why. I think companies and designers write rule sets for the existing market. And therefore, they feel that people want complexity or a certain level of complexity. Excuse me. And there are very few companies who just write really beginner-friendly sort of rule sets. I mean... What I like about Warcry is it's super simple to understand, but then that means there are a lot of tactics about positioning and about when to attack, when not to attack, when to play for the mission, when to actually just kind of like pile everybody in and to attack. There's a lot of depth to that game at that point. And there are not a lot of games that intentionally pull back on the complexity of the rules to allow the strategy come to the forefront. People always compare to things like chess. The rules are pretty simple, but there's a lot of strategy in that game. And I would say there is definitely that feeling in Warcry. There's that feeling in Blitzball as well. I've been playing a bit of Blitzball lately. Super Fantasy Brawl just arrived today as well. I've got God Tier here behind me as well. I find the same kind of thing in those games relatively, but they're more of a board game thing. You don't hear about it so much in actual like miniatures games with free movement. Nunky Mutz, cracking name, mate. It says play X-Wing and dabble with Kill Team. Just wonder if there's a 40k satellite game that has similar streamlined rules to Warcry. There's not really, mate, to be fair. I think there are games that are out there that other people have written sort of rule sets for that you could use to kind of shape it. a company called One Page Rules does a rule set. There are things like Star Breach, where you could craft them, these basically miniature agnostic game rule sets, where you could use 40k minis and craft them around it. Red Rose Wargaming, if you check out their channel, did something a little while ago where they basically took the Warcry rules and basically like reskinned with 40k stuff and called it like Warcry 40k. So there's some stuff out there, but nothing official from Games Workshop. Where are we up to here? Luke's in the half that have not liked the video are the Warcry haters. They probably liked it at the start and then unliked it when I started talking about it. Coxie's just saying that thing there as well, if I can find where that was. Pretty sure Red Wars Wargaming. Yeah, that's right, mate. Unless it was a cheese dream. Sam says, I'm watching, listening on my phone, and I can't like the video. How do I like the video? Did they hide the thumbs up? I think if you're watching on your phone and you've got it sideways, you won't be able to see it. If you turn it so it's in portrait mode, mate, you should be able to like it underneath, I think. Scott saying, does anyone play a Ragnarok? I've heard of it, mate, but never played it. VG saying, anyone who's played Hero Quest recently knows that the rules are very dated. I mean, rolling for standard movement. Even I've house ruled that. I've been playing like my little boy got a game for his 4th birthday recently, which is like a Disney game, and it's essentially kind of like Ludo, really. And even that's got better rolling for movement rules. Peter says, best GW rule set, War Master. Just think of all the spin-offs. Blitzkrieg, Commander, War Master, Ancients, Black Powder, Hail Caesar. Yeah, it's well before my time, mate. Simon Dave says, cheers for the stream, Andy. I'm off to bed. Cheers, mate. Take care. Steve says, do you realise GW had a historical section for some years? Had titles like Warhammer Ancients, Great War, Legends. Yes, mate, I did know about that stuff. What I mean is they didn't want to do a World War II game. So when I say a historical game, they didn't want to do that stuff. Christopher Warden says, evening Andy, missed half the show, but still hit the like button. Thank you, Chris. Spylord says, I'm not sure Lord of the Rings minis were smaller for a cost reason. I think it was part of the terms of the license that they were different scale. No, mate, there's a video where there was an interview with, I forget the guy's name now, but the guy that created the game, his name's just gone out of my head now. And what he said was that when they were signing the licensing deal with New Line Cinema to get the rights for the Lord of the Rings game, basically the way it worked was 8% of anything that they took, 8% of the profits, if you like, from that game went to New Line Cinema. So what they did was they reduced the size of the models to save 8%. This is exactly what he says in the interview. This is where I know it from. So they reduced the size of the minis to basically save 8% of the costs, so that Games Workshop still made the profit that they were always going to make. VG says, Lord of the Rings sculpts are similar to the original Star Wars sculpts. They look like they're sculpted in Play-Doh. Some of the Lord of the Rings sculpts by the Perry twins were pretty good. Some of the newer stuff is pretty good. There's some stuff that is a bit ropey, to be fair. Peter saying, yeah, Lord of the Rings was smaller to stop people mixing the models with other games. That might have also been a consideration, but it was definitely for cost reasons. I'll see if I can dig out the interview with the guy and I'll post it in the Facebook group or in our Patreon group. He says it in there that basically it was all about this 8% cost. It was 8% went to New Line Cinema for the licensing costs, so they reduced the costs by 8% by dropping down the size of the minis. Phil says the best rules that GW ever made was Man of War or maybe Battle Cars. I don't remember Battle Cars, mate. I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about the game. VJ saying his Blitzball human team is painted. Nice one, fella. I'm going to do those, what they call Astra Granite bases as well. George said, just downloaded Hero Quest rules today and looking forward to playing it again with different USA rules and expansions that I didn't even know existed. Yeah, the USA rules were different, mate, to the UK ones. VG says, see Armada as a successor to Man of War. I never really played I'm aware of Man of War, but I never played it to understand just how much of a successor or how similar it is. Peter saying, yeah, because of licensing reasons. It kind of is because of licensing reasons, but it's because of the costs, basically because of the cost of the license. It says, I don't think it's as simple as AOS, overpowered, chaos bad. Mobility and reach are the most important aspects, and flying is nuts. And there are warbands on both that have those aspects. No, it's not that simple, mate. But then again, there's so much variability in the missions that you play that there's almost no attempt to balance some of it, because you couldn't balance it for all of the different kind of missions and stuff. By bringing in more variability in the missions, you almost mask the lack of balance in the warbands. Ed saying Cypher Lords can straight ruin people. Yeah, but by the same stretch, they're really weak and can be very easily taken out as well. Scumman says, you guys obviously haven't seen the new Lord of the Rings models. They're just as crisp as detailed as any other GW game. Yeah, that as I mentioned, mate, the new ones are much better. Lord Maiden saying, for me, the best miniatures game is a toss-up between Burrs and Badgers and Malifaux. I like Burrs and Badgers minis. I wouldn't say the game was kind of like one of the best games ever. I think it's a good game, and I think it's pretty straightforward. But there's, and it's kind of it's fun, but I wouldn't say it was great. Philstein, I thought they were different size, deliberately incompatible with Warhammer Fantasy Battle. It may have been a consideration, mate, but I'm just purely going by an interview with the guy who designed the game, and this is what he said. Scummus saying, look at any GW model from 16 years ago, and they will all say the same thing. Yeah, I don't disagree, mate. Were the old Warhammer Fantasy, were the old Lord of the Rings minis, were they all plastic at the time, or were a lot of them metal? I don't remember, mate, if I'm perfectly honest. Marcus says, I wonder how many Gargants in a Warcry warband. I'm sure you'll be able to get one into like some kind of mission for fighting a giant. It would not surprise me if we see that in White Dwarf coming very soon. Phil saying, I'd love to have a really good beginner-friendly set of rules for 40k to play with my 9-year-old, because Warcry is far easier to pick up and teach than 40k. There is definitely that, mate, yeah. Rick Priestley, Peter Kuhlman's just saying, I've just saw it. I think it is Rick Priestley, mate. And he talks about the whole thing, about how he pitched Lord of the Rings to Games Workshop, and they weren't that keen on it originally, and he ended up pitching it again a bit later when the movie was coming out. That was when I think they went back and repitched it. And I think they said that, like, another thing he talks about is the fact that it was easier to get than they imagined, because the way New Line Cinema broke down the licensing deals, there was a license for like lunchboxes, there was a license for like t-shirts, or a license for hoodies, there was a license for board games, and there wasn't, nobody else had kind of tried to take the license for miniatures games, which is why they managed to get it, because nobody else had kind of wanted it, or nobody else had gone for it, because the license was broke down into so many different variables that actually they were quite happy. Yep, you give us 8%. We're quite happy for you to have it, kind of thing. Age of the Atom, hello there, says, I was hoping Kill Team would be a Warcry analog, but it's lost me a few minutes into the how to play video. Yeah, it's not a difficult game, but it's certainly more complex than Warcry. Once you've played a few times, it does become easier, but there's a lot of movement parts and there's a lot of dice rolling. Phil saying, we've used command points for re-rolls and we play a 50-point level when we do. Was that something else? I must have missed that bit. Red Rose Wargames says, my ears are burning. Nice to see you. Barry says, thumbs up on your phone. Close the live chat. Click the thumbs up. Reopen the live chat. That's it, mate. I knew it was there somewhere. Anima says, many war gamers, especially old ones, tend to think that big, crunchy rules are good and streamlined rules are bad. There is an element of that, mate. I think there is an element of people who think, I didn't have it easy, so therefore everybody else shouldn't have it easy. Those times are long gone. Anything that encourages people to pick up dice and minis and play a game together can only be good for me. No matter whether it's popular or not, anything that brings people together to play a game is good fun. VG says, that's very interesting regarding the 8%. Yeah, I'm going to have to try and dig out the interview now, mate. It was with a kind of like a YouTube channel that I'd never really heard of. They weren't a particularly big channel. I think basically the guy from the channel had basically gone to see Rick Priestley and interviewed him, and it was a big fan of Lord of the Rings. I mean, it might be a big channel now, but certainly when they first made the video, it wasn't. I'll try and dig it out, mate. But yeah, it's quite. I found it really interesting actually hearing that explanation. James saying, yeah, Lord of the Rings Fellowship is almost 20 years old. It goes quick, mate, doesn't it? Christian sharing the links for Amazon Prime Day. Thank you very much, mate. Very, very kind of you. Yeah, if anybody is buying from Amazon over Prime Day, if you click on my Amazon affiliate links, it helps support the channel. You pay exactly the same price, and I make a really small commission. But a small commission over lots of people soon adds up and helps kind of pay my bills. So thank you very much. Andy says, can I remind you, Space Hulk is ace? It's good. It's not the best rule set, but and I still see Space Hulk as a bit of a board game, to be fair. If we scroll down a bit, Peter says, has anybody mentioned Dreadfleet yet? I mentioned it very briefly, mate, in the list of all the games I can remember. I must have missed a bit where Jesse was saying about, I mentioned the one-page rules project. Where's the where are we up to here? Space Hulk 3rd edition, improved the minis and lovely rules. And he's saying Space Hulk simple rules, game in a box, nothing else needed. Yeah, game in a box. It's a board game. That's what I mean. And there was nothing more for it, was there? There was no expansions or anything nothing else. Phil saying, I wonder if it's maybe a rumor that's become fact regarding the Lord of the Ring miniatures and game size. Yeah, it quite possibly could have been. I'm obviously not as close to it, and the only information I've got from it was from Rick Priestley's interview. There were metal characters, yeah. Ed saying, I'd be shocked if there wasn't a mission to fight a giant. I'd be shocked as well, mate, if I'm honest. Peter says, the standard foot cavalry was plastic, but specialist models were metal. I still have the first metal iteration of the Fellowship. Yeah, that'll probably be why, mate. And maybe that's one of the reasons why some of the stuff's been like re-sculpted now for plastics and stuff. Animus is saying good rules should be 30% complex and 70% intuitive. I don't see why complexity makes a good rule set. It doesn't need to be complex. It can be complex, but it doesn't have to be complex at all. A game can be 5% complex, and still be a great game. I think people assume complexity equals strategy and tactics, and that's just not the case. Jameson, he just got a new White Dwarf. Is that the new one? I'm trying to think now. Is that the new one for subscribers, or is that the new one that we've already got as subscribers? Scummush says, it's a fact about Lord of the Rings models. The size came straight from the creator's mouth. I don't know which we're talking about now, mate. I don't know if we're talking about the size being not matching everybody else's, or the fact that it was about saving costs. Jim saying, looking at the contents in UGW and they talk about what we've been working on in pandemic lockdown. That's a hell of a time capsule. I tell you what, mate, it is. It's definitely want to keep that one. Tony says, wasn't sure if I only played once before years ago, remembered liking it, so then got it was released in 16, ashamed to say it's still in the box unplayed. Yes, mate, that's what happens, isn't it? VG says, I love reading John Wombat's interviews with old game writers. It might have been him, mate. I'll have to check it out. Tanuki D says, I'm still waiting for a decent GW rule set. There's a few good ones, mate. You obviously just haven't played them yet. VG says, came in a box. I prefer the SNL version. And he's saying there were expansions for Space Hulk. Sorry, mate. What I meant was it never became like a... I still think that Blackstone Fortress is still a board game. You know what I mean? It's self-contained. It's not expandable in the way that 40k is expandable, or Warcry is expandable, or Kill Team is expandable. If you get everything you need in a box, and the only things to build on that game is when a specific expansion is released, then for me that's a board game, really. Andy Smith is saying, is Warcry not the same game in a box? No, so basically the starter box, you can treat it like a game in a box, but then you can buy different mats for it, you can buy different terrain for it, you can buy different war bands for it. It becomes kind of like expandable exponentially. So you can buy other stuff for it that are not specifically sort of like just like if Warcry in a box came out and the only thing you could buy for it was another Warcry warband and that was it. That's like an expansion for the boxed game for the original bit, as opposed to just like a miniatures kind of game. Samson, I love the skirmish board game trend. Huge Aristea fan, but Underworlds, the looks of God Tier exactly really excite me. There's a lot of that now, and I think companies are realizing now there's a real kind of need, I think, or there's a real boon in game in a box expansions for that sort of non-faction specific. So if you think things like Super Fantasy Brawl, things like Aristea, things like God Tier, where basically you just everybody buys everything. Games where you have to buy for specific factions end up limiting who buys what. James Hodgson, I think some people confuse rules complexity and with depth within a rule set. I love simple rule sets with lots of depth. Star Wars, Legion, or Walking Dead. Yeah, I agree, mate. I think that there's definitely complexity. Complexity can just make games sort of clunky, and it can make them not fun. Even a small amount of complexity, if it doesn't add to the game. If it adds to the game, or the game is designed to be complex because that's what the rules writer wants, because he wants it to be really crunchy and really kind of clunky, then that's fine. But just putting complexity in to try and say, oh, it's really kind of quite hard to play, and that makes it strategic. That's not the same thing, really. Lord Maiden says, I know what you mean about Bros and Badges. The game itself is not as great as Warcry or some others, but the models make up for it. Yeah, and there are a lot of games where basically really nice miniatures are enough to want to pick up the game. I completely agree. Peter says, Gene Stealer come to mind as the second Space Hulk Edition 1 expansion. Were Gene Stealers not in Space Hulk, mate? Is that not what's already in there? I can't remember now, mate. James is saying, I have a specific memory of eating a burger in a local cafe in the heat of summer with a mate and opening up some epic Space Marines. Probably around 2000. One of those odd memories that are super vivid. I've got memories like that of going to a toy shop in Sunderland with a mate of mine and kind of looking at all of the single figure blisters on them kind of like racks all just piled up, and like looking through them, looking for ones that like we might actually want to paint, because it wasn't like they didn't have like one kind of rack thing of them with all the same one behind it. Everything was just piled onto these like little, I forget what they're called now, but basically just the racks with the little kind of cut out in the top where so they slide on, and you used to have to kind of like pull them all off and look through them to see what there was. Andy says, so we're calling Blood Bowl a board game. It's a board game in the sense that it's played on a board and that it doesn't have kind of like free movement in the way that like a skirmish game would, or a miniatures game. However, it's expandable by the fact that it's got like you can buy lots of different teams in the same way you can for, say, Warcry. You can list build. You know, like so. It doesn't really matter what you call it, really, at the end of the day. All I mean is that if a game comes in a box and it's played on a board, and the only things that are available for it are a specific expansion to build upon that, then I see it more of a kind of like a board game, or a kind of a specific sort of enclosed thing. If it's a game where you can buy lots of different teams, you can buy lots of different bits and pieces, and you can list build, and you can mess around with it and stuff, and get your own factions and stuff, then for me it's more of a kind of like, it's more of a collectible miniatures game, if you like. Mark's in Space Hulk has always been Terminators versus Gene Stealers. Yeah, that's what I thought it was, mate. Where are we up to? I don't know what that's about. Flying Mama saying, can I be a Mars bar? I'm allergic to nuts. So much to the statement, of course, more passionate. I must have missed some of the chat there, mate. Christian said, if I remember correctly, Space Hulk Gene Stealer expansion allowed you to play as the aliens hunting Space Marines. That's what it must have been. A VG and Skull Munch having a bit of handbags at 10 paces, mate. I don't know what it's about, but people are passionate. You don't have to call each other out on it. Like, people are passionate about stuff. I'm assuming this is around the Lord of the Rings minis, is it? Skullmunch plays Lord of the Rings and will know more about it than I ever will. So if he says they're good models, they're good models. But everybody has their own personal taste. There's no need to kind of call each other out on it. Carla says, what's your top 5? My top 5 games, I guess it changes over time. Like, if it's top 5 games of anything I've ever played versus top 5 games of like kind of where my top 5 are now right now because of the stuff I'm playing, it changes. And because of current situations where we're locked down and I can't get opponents and stuff, that's shaping the games that I play because I'm playing with my wife basically. But if I talk about my top 5 games that I've played ever, in no particular order, Warcry's in there. I love Malifaux. I was a big fan of like War Machine and Hordes actually when I used to play it back in the day. It turned into a game I didn't really enjoy so much, but when I was really enjoying it, it was a great game. So what we got there: Malifaux, War Machine, Warcry, God Tier's in there. I'm really enjoying God Tier at the moment. And the other one, Blitzball, I'm really enjoying at the minute, but I haven't really been playing it long enough to say it's kind of my top 5. What would I put in there from a number 5 point of view? Probably Walking Dead. I would say that's probably in my top 5 as well. Those are probably the ones I've enjoyed the most over the last probably 5 or 10 years, I would say. Andy says top 5 GW. I wouldn't say I have. I'll tell you what would be my top 5 GW then. Warcry 100%. Silver Tower, Gore Chosen. What else would I put in there? Top 5. I'd put Underworlds in there, and possibly. Oh, what would I put in for the 5th one? I might put Space Hulk in there, but yeah, that would probably be it. I think. Jimmy G says Carpet Monster is just eating a whole bolt action German. How's that even possible? Tanuka says, yeah, Malifaux's a good one. Difficult to teach to newbies though. When I got into Malifaux, mate, I played it. We were all new players, and the game had only just come out, so we were all really just teaching each other. And actually, after playing the first few games, it actually wasn't too difficult. I think where people get lost a little bit with Malifaux is in that there's a lot of rules and kind of and interactions on the cards, and that's just something that comes with time and of playing it. You can play it like, I think the way we used to play it back in version 1 was almost ignore the other side of the card. Like, don't even look at the back of the card. Let's just get our heads around understanding movement, understanding the different sort of strategies and schemes and stuff. Understand all that and just kind of play it. And then as we built up, we started to understand some of the synergies and the interactions and things like that. But yeah, it's always been the lore of the game, the fact that the models are so different. There's something for everybody in there, and I love the fact it's not just about straight up kind of I'm going to kill you, you're going to kill me. You can play a whole game of that and not attack anybody really, just trying to get out of the way and achieve your different schemes and strategies. I love that game. Peter Cooman says top 5: Walking Dead, All Out War, Dead Zone, Lord of the Rings, Blitzkrieg Commander, and Napoleonic Wargaming by Neil Thomas. I've not heard of Blitzkrieg Commander or Napoleonic Wargaming. Luke says Gore Chosen. Haven't heard someone mention that since it was released. It's a great game, Gore Chosen. Massively underrated, and it's definitely, you can see the influence it had on Warhammer Underworlds. It definitely kind of come from some of that. Tony says, given infinite money, time, and always having an opponent, what game you haven't played would you like to try? Marvel Crisis Protocol's up there, mate. I would definitely want to try that because I keep thinking about it, and even if it's just for the point of like to have those minis, because I'm a bit of a comic book geek. Batman miniatures game, if night models weren't so awful, I would potentially put in there. Is there anything else? Unlimited time, opponents, and money. No, I think from the games I haven't played, I think I'd probably just put those two in there, mate. Flying Marvel says, I don't think anything will beat our weekender game of Warcry. That was intense. I think even Peter had his foot on. That's still the best game of Warcry I've ever had. I've had some brilliant games of Warcry, but that one was it was so tense. I love that game. No worries, Skull Munch, mate. Cool one. A rumour that was a fact from the creator. Yeah, that's it then, mate. Yeah, facts are facts. George is saying, top 5 Shadows of Brimstone Forbidden Fortress. Carnivale. So, talking of Carnivale, this month's War Games, what's it called? Tabletop Gaming Magazine has a Carnivale miniature on the front. So I've just ordered that to get delivered to my home. So when that arrives, I'll have that resin Carnivale miniature. And I've been watching some kind of, or trying to watch some gameplay stuff online about it. It's vastly underrated. It's very difficult to find good gameplay for that game. It's not easy. I'm surprised TC Combat don't push it a bit harder because they keep releasing stuff. There's new stuff coming for it all the time, but you hardly hear about it. James says, do any campaign games? Warcry campaigns are fun. If you could play any games campaign, what would it be? I don't really tend to play a lot of campaign games, mate, because I don't have like a gaming circle really that I play with often enough. Because I used to work away a lot, I could never commit to kind of going to the games club every week or anything like that. So I never really got into campaign stuff. But I would like to. I think given regular opponent, I think I'd like to, mate. And I'd love to try the Warcry stuff. I've kind of like played through it myself to understand how the campaign stuff works. But yeah, I just never had the opportunity, bud. Let's talk board games. Says Go Chosen was short-lived. I don't recall seeing more than the core box. That's all it was, mate. It was just a boxed game. It was a way of pumping out miniatures to people. But you could buy sort of chaos solos that had rules in Go Chosen. So the 4 that came in the box, I think there was another 4 that had like stats that you could play. But as far as kind of sort of arena combat goes, you didn't need to kind of any more than that. It was, as I mentioned before, more of a board game really. Greatest challenge Jan Lowe's beard. You're right. Lucian, you show me Warcry and I'll show you Marvel Crisis Protocol. How does June 2022 sound? Nice one, mate. Peter Cini's top 5 GW War Master Epic, Wartime, Dreadfleet, and 40k 5th edition. My first ever go of 40k was in 5th edition, and I hated it. James says, I might paint some Lord of the Rings minis at some point, if only to paint more classic fantasy models. I love the AOS sculpts, but what's wrong with just a bloke with a sword? Yeah, I think if you're just wanting to paint fantasy minis, there's a lot of choice out there. But if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings stuff, then by all means, go for it, mate. Luke says, TT Combat don't push any of their games, but keep pumping out stuff for them, which is great. Just order the new Coco-style Rumble Slam team, which look amazing. They've obviously got an audience, mate. There must be people buying that stuff, but you hardly hear about it. It's a shame, really, because I'd like to see that kind of stuff just grow, and I'd like to know more people kind of talking about it, really. George is saying top 5: Kings of War, Deathless Titanicus, Star Saga, Dreadball, and Vanguard. I'm feeling a romantic bias to your list there, mate. Marco says, what do you think Warcry Catacombs will add to the game? Before I get on to kind of guesswork stuff, I'll tell you what I know about it. So this has come from the creator. He said there's going to be rules in there for basically for knocking down doors, for falling into lava and stuff, and being able to kind of like sort of taking damage from being able to get pushed into like lava pits and things. So they all sound pretty cool. I like the fact that it's going to be kind of quite tight, and that like ranged combat will become less of a problem. And I would imagine things that fly probably won't be able to fly inside some kind of dungeon, because you would assume it's underneath. Therefore, there's a roof to it, and there's walls floor to ceiling. So it'll be interesting to see how those kind of rules come in. But I just think it'll just bring in like just some really interesting tweaks to it. I would love to build like a nice kind of like underground lava filled dungeon and stuff for that. I like the board. I think the board looks great, but it doesn't film very well putting physical walls up, to be fair, so it wouldn't look great on camera. But I think to play a game just like with a mate type thing, actually having a proper dungeon to play in would be awesome. James said, I'd love you to cover Carnivale, mate. The mad lore and aesthetic do it for me. I only recently found out a bit more about the lore for Carnivale, actually, and it was quite interesting. Jimmy G says, George is saying Carnivale is freaking awesome. Jimmy G says, TV Combat, the only miniature wrestling game on the market that's fun, but needs pushing more. Simple rules, lovely figs. I've got the version 1 of it, and it is good fun. I've not played the kind of the newer version. I think it's had like a 2nd edition update, hasn't it? Peter's a big Space Hulk fan, I think. James saying, every time someone says Carnivale in this chat, it increases the odds of my wallet taking a hit. To be honest, I bought this copy of Tabletop Gaming so I can see the quality of the mini. So I hope the mini is of good quality when it arrives. VG says, I like the Lunchbox Rainbow minis, but I'm yet to see a bat rep online that actually makes me want to play. The gameplay just looks so dull. I've heard, I must admit, some of the gameplay stuff I've seen doesn't grab me, but then I've heard so many people telling me how much fun the game is that I've obviously just watched dull playthroughs, I think is the problem. Peter saying there, Rumble Slam looks so cool, but the dice are a nightmare for a group that has someone who's colourblind. Yeah, having like gold, silver and bronze dice, mate, is not good. I would completely agree with that one, mate. Vijay saying, yeah, couldn't pick top 5, too many variables. Yeah, and it's, I would agree, it's definitely biased by who I'm playing with, where I'm playing, and like for example, War Machine being in my top 5 there of all time takes me back to, I was travelling around with a group of lads, going to events and staying overnight and having weekends away, and it was a lot of that enjoyment I got from that game was linked to the social aspect and the kind of like the nights out and the fun games that we had. So yeah, like it's a lot of it is probably even rose tinted glasses a bit. Marcus says, on my end, finally decided a paint scheme for his Vargeist and Crypt Infernals for Warcry. Nice one. Lucy and I mentioned Carnivale on the podcast. I think I need to look closer at this. I want a Wereshark. Yeah, we just talked about that, weren't we? Jeff Hayden says, early dinner night, take care and happy gaming. You too, mate. Thanks for coming in. Lucian, the mini's really good quality. Certainly the Rumble Slam ones are certainly as far as value for money. Somebody said to me that some of the resins for Carnivale aren't great, which is why I thought I'd take a chance and pick up this magazine and have a look at them. James is saying, anyone ever play Gorka Morga? I remember gazing at a box in the 90s. It's also fun to see it dig a knob. I've never played it, mate. George is saying you'd love SOB. That is Brimstone, isn't it? Shadow of Brimstone, guaranteed. Revised core boxes with better minis. I'll have to look out for that, mate. Yoakum says, let's play Carnivale. Escape the Fog by On Tabletop made me buy it. Yeah, do you know what it is? I'm sometimes not convinced by their stuff. Let's just leave it at that. Peter says, man, that's a big glass of vodka. No wonder you keep going blurry. It's actually really, really weak apple juice, mate. Peter says, it's seriously the reason we don't buy Rumble Slam. To be honest with you, I bet that never even crossed their mind. Martin says, if we had enough cash for Warcry Catacombs, I could build a full diorama style board for it. All I need now is resin to make the lava. Yeah, I kind of want to get my hands on it first, see what it adds, and if it adds some fun stuff, I'd quite happily, I think, build some kind of board for it. Lord Maiden's in top 5 of what he's played: Malifaux, Warmer Hordes, Burrs and Badgers, Moonstone and Necromunda. Lots of variables though. Yeah, Sam's saying he misses playing War Machine with his friends. Stupid COVID. Yeah, definitely, mate. I just miss playing games, mate. I mean, really, luckily, my wife's been absolutely amazing, and she's been playing some games that she probably would never really otherwise give a second look to. Like, what we played Blitz Bowl the other night. We've played a few games of Armada. Super Fantasy Brawl just arrived today, so we plan to play that. Our plan is to play another couple of games of Armada this week, and then film another battle report next weekend. But introduce more magic and stuff like that as well, which is why we want to play it a few more times, so that it's a bit more familiar for her as we add in more rules around the magic and the specific characters and the faction traits, and bring in a more fun scenario as well. Sam's off to lunch. He says, have some naan for you. Cheers, mate. VJ says, okay, folks, got to drop a little guy daycare. Take care, VJ. Thanks for coming in. Nice one. So we're coming up to about 10 to 11 now. So I think we'll start to wrap up. If anybody's got any questions, if anybody's got anything they want to chat about, what do folks think about the new Gargants? Is anybody going to be shelling out 120 quid for them? We've got the new Catan coming for Necrons coming as well. We've got the new Monolith coming. I think the new Monolith is £105. I think it is UK price. So yeah, we're starting to see some plus £100 models coming now quite frequently. And that for me personally is no matter how many you if you say, well, you only need 4 to build an army or something like that when we're talking about Gargants, that kind of stuff. I know that you could say technically that's then £500 for an army. Other armies are £500. But for me, like £120 buys you like starter boxes for other games. It buys you a lot of stuff. If all you play is AOS, knock yourself out. It's your money. You spend it on whatever you want. I'm not saying to anybody that I think it's expensive or anything else. But when it comes to value, I just think that you can buy a lot of hobby for £120 outside of just one model. James Bray saying, Luke's saying, I think bugger Gargants and buy 4 or 5 Mantic Giants. Yeah, Mantic Giants 25 quid, I think it is, compared to 120, and I think they're exactly the same height. They're about 7 inches tall. Peter saying no Gargants for me, they're way too much. Other Peter saying I didn't know Catan were coming, but they're way overdue. £67, I think they are, mate. They're coming next week's pre-order, I think they are. James is saying getting the Catan, no point in pretending, might be on the Christmas list. Also saying I want a Mega Gargant, but not at that price. Flying Mammal saying, Night, thanks for that, stay safe. Thanks for coming in, nice to see you, Ruth, take care. Spylaw saying 105 for the Monolith means I'll be jazzing up the old one. Yeah, I think the old one wasn't that expensive, was it? I mean, there's obviously a bit of a difference between them, but yeah, for me personally, it's not. There are some models that I would love to buy just to paint up because I think they're really nice. The Silent King, for example. The big Ossiarch Bone Reapers one where the guy's kind of sitting on the throne with the guys down below him and stuff. Those kind of models are beautiful works of art, and I'd like them just to paint up as a bit of a kind of hobby project. But the this newer stuff at the minute that's coming out, and it's like 105 quid. The one for what's it called again, for the Lumineth, I didn't really like that. The Techless model, I think it wasn't a big fan of that one. Not a huge fan of the new Gargants and stuff. It's I think it's a lot. Lord Maiden says, do you think you could do a top 10 or top 20 miniature games you probably haven't heard of list? If I haven't heard of them, I might struggle to put a list together. But I know what you mean. Yeah, I probably could, mate. I could probably do a top 10 games that you've never heard of. Yeah, I probably could, actually. Where was seeing that? Peter saying 1 Gargant the same as 3 or 4 Dead Zone starters. There is that, mate. Barry saying, when does the new Warcry box go for pre-order? It's not been confirmed, mate, but we do know that the new Warcry novel that comes alongside the new Warcry starter box was supposed to be available in October. So I'm guessing last weekend in October. Let me have a look at my diary and see if I can think where. See if I can think whereabouts it gets. Let's have a look. See if I can think whereabouts we might see it. It's quite possible we might find out about it not this weekend, coming the weekend after for pre-order to be released, maybe the 30th, or Saturday the 31st of October. We might see it then. Joachim saying I could get a Mega Gargant for 104 quid. Still, I put my money on Warcry Catacombs. Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. I mean, you get a lot more in that Warcry box, and they're probably going to be similarly priced. They're probably going to be cheaper for Warcry than it is for for a Mega Gargant. Crowley saying models are amazing, but no chance I'm paying that. Yeah, it's kind of where I am, mate. I think it would need to be something pretty special for that kind of money. Jimmy saying I don't play GW games, but no way would I ever pay 100 plus for a giant mini. Yeah. George saying I really must flog my Necrons. Corey saying I'd love to have a go at painting some of the new Necron stuff. Some of it's nice, mate. Yeah, it is nice, mate. The new the Catan model I think is really nice. Paul says buy the Mantic Giant. GW is now officially silly money. Yeah. Marcus says my question is for the Void Dragon is walking around now in 40k. Did Mars blow up? I've got no idea, mate. I didn't. I'm not up on the 40k law. Peter says £100. I'd probably get a Knight or a Morka Gorka note. I think even they're cheap. I think they're like 85 quid, mate. I think they're less. Luke saying would love to buy in the Gash to paint and a few of the other big ones. Yeah, there are some things where I almost think by the time I factor in 20% off, I could maybe push the boat out for a bit of a one-off special model that I really like that would be a bit of a treat to kind of paint, and it would take me months to do it and I get a lot of enjoyment from it. But yes, some of the stuff at the minute I'm not as sure about. Mark's saying got to go. See everyone Wednesday. See you Wednesday, mate. Lemur Crazy says Middle Earth Strategy Battle is GW's best rule set. Alternating turns keep both players engaged most of the time. I don't think alternating turns is enough to say it's the best rule set, mate. There's plenty of games that have alternating turns. Kill Team has a really interesting alternating turn mechanic that I quite like. Obviously Warcry has alternating turns as well. So yeah, I don't think that's enough to see a Middle Earth for that reason. Frantic says there is a live reveal on Saturday. We'll probably have Warcry news. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that's the case, mate. I didn't realise there was another one. Lord Maiden say it could be the 31st, which is Warhammer Day. I forgot about that. It is, isn't it, mate? So yeah, it could well be then in that case. Luke's saying Focus. Is it gone again? Looks like it's all right. Spider Lord says when they showed the Mega Gargant was twice the size of the normal Gargant, I was like, not bad even for the price. I disagree, mate. I think it's just because it's bigger than what they've got doesn't instantly make it good value. Like, for example, Mantic's Giant is the same height as the big one, and it's 25 quid. Like, are we really saying that the GW one is £95 better? Like, that's silly money. That like, so just because it's bigger doesn't mean it's value for money. And I know people are saying, oh, but it comes with loads of different frames because you can build it up in 3 different ways. And I get that, but then what you're doing is you're paying for stuff that you're not going to use. So, Solo Wargaming Show says top 10 list of games I've never heard of. 10, the one about ships. 9, the one about cars. Spider Lord says I saw it next to Bigger Plastic Knight and got not good value. Sorry, mate. Yeah, I read it in isolation there. Joachim says I haven't read through the old Warcry anthology book yet. Heavy reading for me. It's great, mate. It's a really good read. Christopher says you Brits are complaining about prices like you were Aussies. It's all comparative, mate. I mean, it's the creep. We're seeing a lot more models now creeping in above that £100 mark now, and it comes down to personal taste. If you've got bottomless pits of money and you can afford it or whatever it is, for some people that might be the difference between kind of like you can buy like look how, as an example, Indomitor's box was 125 quid. Are we saying that there's the same amount of value in one Gargant as there is in an Indomitor's box? So no matter where you are in the world, those two are comparatively priced. And I can't for 1 second say a Gargant is good value when you could have had like the kind of like the full starter box with the rule set and all them minis in for 40k. That's when them things kind of sort of come into price. SBG most accurate rule set historically from all the GW games. Horse archers really behave like horse archers. All games have alternating turns. I think people mean alternating unit activations. Yes, but quite a lot of games these days have alternating unit activations. I think the days of I'm going to move everything, I'm going to activate everything, you activate everything are very few and far between now. Jameson GW shares took another huge bump recently. People must be buying these minis. I agree, mate. To be honest, I'd consider buying minis. If I see how well these Gargans sell, I might buy myself some from shares. Tony saying the Mantic Giant has a couple of build options. To be honest, mate, it's got 2 different heads. It's got 4 arms options. So, like, there's 4 different ways you could kind of build it with the arm options. And you can take the fur pelt off or leave the fur pelt on as well. So there is some different options with that Mantic Giant. And then it's a little bit more expensive if you buy, say, like the Frost Giant, which comes with some resin parts as well. But yeah, I just think it's quite expensive. Carla saying the cost of the Giant is associated to the average cost of a 2,000 point army. It doesn't really matter, mate, does it? It's still not good value. Like to say, well, it's only going to cost me 500 quid to buy 4 of them, just doesn't feel like good value. Let me see, alternating phases, move, shoot, fight. Yeah, I know what you mean, mate. I have played the game. I just don't find it that much fun. Crowley says the Terminator Chaplain they're doing for Warhammer Day looks cool. I just saw that tonight, mate. Spylaw says the thing about GW is that an army used to be 200 to 300 quid. When I work for them, they compare it to consoles. Maybe as consoles go up, that's exactly. I think these days, like, it's those kind of models are the ones that will appeal to kind of youngsters. But if their parents aren't really aware of the wider, like if their parents don't understand that, you only need four of those or whatever to make an army, like it's a massive amount of money just to pull out for one model. Let's talk board games. I have to plug my game Battlespace Ultra Modern Solo Skirmish. James Bracey and GW shares up 133% since March. Yeah, they've done well, mate. Paul saying instead of buying a Gargan, buy GW shares. Yes, exactly. Skullmunch says, knowing how it looks, share prices will go down when we buy them. Do you know what it is? It's one of those things that the longer you wait, where you think, they must have peaked. I think a lot of it hinges in the future on, they've shown how strong they can be through kind of like bad times. So I think the market has quite a bit of faith and confidence in them at the minute. I think it's going to depend upon how their licensing stuff goes in the future. So when this like Netflix or Amazon TV show, if it's well received, it'll take another kick again. But if it comes out and it's awful, then I think we might see a bit of a dip. James is just saying if that 40k Netflix series hits big, then the shares will be great. Yeah, I honestly think if you can afford to gamble on it, that's what you're gambling on. You're gambling upon that being a success and reaching out into people who've never really even looked at 40k or looked at Games Workshop. Anyway, it's just after 11 o'clock now. I'm going to wrap that up there. So thank you very much, folks, for coming in. It's been a nice lively chat tonight. Loads of stuff. If you're new to this channel, please do consider subscribing. I do a live stream every Monday. I do a live stream every Wednesday. I do a shortened version of this live stream, just to kind of as a catch up on a Tuesday as well. And then there's lots of other things that I do as well, like playthroughs, how to play reviews, bits and pieces as well. So if you are new, please do consider subscribing to the channel. And Christian's just sharing a link there at the Patreon. Yeah. Thank you very much. If you could support me through the Patreon, that would be awesome. This is my full-time job now, and that's how I get paid. So thanks for watching, folks. I will see you all on Wednesday. Thanks for watching my video. I hope that you really enjoyed it. And if you did, why not consider clicking on the suggested video below to see more of the work that I've done. If you'd like to support the long-term sustainability of this channel, why not consider checking out my Patreon, where you can pledge and support from as little as $2 a month, and there is lots of different tiers and bonuses which will give you access to a private Discord server. It will give you free t-shirts, free mugs, a podcast every month, and a number of other things, including getting your name at the end of every video, like these awesome folks who already support me now.